So what I showed on the screen was a preview from the film Frozen 2, which actually released a week ago. Now, in this video, I'm going to be using Disney as the stock company to demonstrate all the techniques that we've been learning so far. So I'm going to be showing you all the techniques that I use on a day-to-day basis when deciding whether to buy a given stock. And of course, I'm going to be giving you an update of my portfolio as I do each week. So what I want to do is just briefly give an update of the recent activities, and that being of the release of Frozen 2. So the film's been out for about a week now, and within the first 3 days, £277 million was made in revenue. And that is a record in itself. Now, keep in mind, this movie was released in several countries simultaneously. So in the past, you would generally have a staggered rollout, which just means that the release will take place in one country, and then maybe a week or two later, the film will be released in the respective country. So that does make it a little bit easier to break some of these early day records. But nonetheless, it's still an incredible amount of revenue made. So before we begin our journey on analysing the Disney stock, I also want to reference all the films that have been released this past year. So we have a quick look from March to December of 2019. There's been many big named film releases throughout this year. So Captain Marvel, we've got Avengers, Aladdin, Toy Story 4, Spider-Man, The Lion King, Frozen 2, and in the future, Star Wars. So with that in mind, let's begin our journey on analysing the Disney stock. So on the Trading 212 platform, you can see that I have the Disney stock on screen, and already I've added all the films that Walt Disney has released this year. And I thought it would be quite interesting just to try and picture what has happened in the stock market when a given release has taken place. So some of these films I haven't actually heard of. So we can see the price movements of the given stock, and we have a rough timeline of when the given film came out. So take Captain Marvel, for instance. So looking at Captain Marvel, for instance, and also the film Dumbo was released at similar time. Now, maybe the latter explains why there was an initial drop in the stock market. But we can see that sometime after the release of both films, the stock market jumped significantly, and timed in between that price increase, so from the later part of March to April, we also had the release of The Avengers and another unknown film that I've heard of named Penguins. And we can see that once the price hit at a peak, it's somewhat consolidated. And then we had the film release of Aladdin, which again pushed the market in an upward direction, and then beating sort of the recent all-time highs. And just continuing with the story, we have Dark Phoenix. I actually haven't heard of that film. And then Toy Story 4, which somewhat has an increase in the price movement, probably not too much happening there. And the same with Spider-Man and the release of The Lion King. And interestingly, there was somewhat of a drop after the release of Spider-Man and Lion King, and that also continued to drop down when some other films that I haven't heard of came out. But what has been quite interesting recently is that there's just been a massive price increase, and with the release of Frozen 2, which was sort of in the third week of November, the price has literally hit an all-time high. And in the future, come sort of late December, we're not sure how the stock will perform, but Star Wars will be released. Now, in saying all that, I am literally just mapping the releases of these known and some unknown titles, and just kind of correlating with the price movement of the stock market. Now, that's not a true indication of what's been happening at all. It's just interesting to picture if there are some sort of trends there. And generally speaking, when a film does come out and it has a lot of positive news, there's a higher probability of the stock price increasing. Now, of course, I would never look at when a given film is released and try to annotate the screen. That's simply just for the purposes of this YouTube channel. But nonetheless, I thought it could be a fun exercise to look into. And there are some instances, maybe coincidentally, but there are sort of increases and decreases in price movements. Now, before we begin with our actual technical analysis of Disney, I first want to switch over to what's known as Disney Plus. And I did have this on the screen in my intro, but what exactly is Disney Plus? Well, it's a subscription-based model which allows you to consume content from 600 plus titles currently of Disney-based content. So, as some of you may or may not be aware, Pixar, Marvel, the Star Wars franchise, and even National Geographic are all owned by Disney itself. One could argue that currently it's a little bit limited and very narrow scoped compared to the likes of, say, Netflix, which has much more of a broader appeal. But it's still interesting to learn about some of the stats. So within the first 24 hours of the release of Disney Plus, there was 10 million subscribers onto the platform. And keep in mind that there's only been, as far as I'm aware, the US, maybe a few other countries that have access to Disney Plus. So the likes of the UK, as you can see on my screen, it's not even possible to join the subscription program. So 10 million is a very large number within 24 hours. And if we compare to the likes of Netflix, which is around the 158 million mark, we can see that from the onset, Disney Plus as a subscription model could be a big contender for the likes of Netflix and other streaming services. So the overall lesson to be aware of here is that if a given company releases a new product, for instance, that can impact the stock market in a positive or negative way. And so if we go back to our Trading 212 account, and I should say anyone who wants to join the platform, there will be a link in the description and you can receive a free stock up to £100. From my experience, you generally receive a stock in the £10 mark, but on the off chance that you do receive a stock in the £100 range, do let me know in the comments below. So on the Trading 212 platform, I just want to point out that the news of Disney Plus was quite active from the August mark, and we can see that the stock actually decreased in value. But given at the time of this video we are at all-time highs, there's no doubt that such a service has impacted in the stock market price. So we can see that at the end of November, the price of the Disney stock is an all-time high compared to that of back in April. But what I generally like to do is just run a standard Google search, and for the given stock symbol, I like to look at the 5-year period, and we can see that there has been a general uptrend in the direction of the stock price, which is great knowing that the company is improving year on year. But at the same time, we don't really want to be buying into stocks that have peaked in price. And if I just look on the 52-week high, we can see $153. That's basically where we are right now. That price movement has happened recently. So we're at the highest price point for the year so far. Also to keep in mind, we care about dividend-based stocks, and we can see on the listing that we have a dividend yield of 1.16. That is quite low given that the price of the stock, anything higher than the $100 mark, is quite a high price to pay for such a low dividend yield. So let's continue with our analysis, and what I have on the screen is the Seeking Alpha website. So if you just type in the ticker symbol, which is DIS for Disney, on the screen we have a bunch of metrics that we can analyze. And so if you hit the dividend tab and select the dividend yield, so if I move my cursor onto today's date on the left hand side, so just viewing the number here, we can see we're at 1.16 for the dividend yield. And if we go back to what we had on Google, we can see where that price is coming from. And so a nice sort of buying opportunity is more at the 1.6, maybe 1.5% mark, which is definitely achievable, but didn't happen since January of 2019. So let's go back to the Trading 212 platform and look at what the price was back in January. So we're around the $100 to the $112 mark. So that is really low compared to the price we're at right now. We're at the 158 price point. So realistically, do we think Disney will drop back down to January prices? The answer I would say is no. And so we doubt very much to be hitting sort of the 1.5% for dividends. So for those who had brought the Disney stock back in early 2019, and even before that, from say 2016, they have a decent deal. For those who buy into the stock now, obviously you're getting less returns and the price is that much higher. But for Disney, it's a well-established brand, a well-established company, and with all the titles that they've been releasing and the introduction of the subscription of Disney Plus, we can expect the price to increase even further. So on buying the Disney stock, I would like to buy in the future. It's not a high paying dividend stock, but it would be nice to add to my Trading 212 portfolio. But the price is an all-time high right now. So the price that I feel that this stock can bounce back to is the price that we had in October, around the 128 mark. That is the most realistic price point we're going to reach again. And so I will set an alert on my account. So to do so, all you need to do is right click and you have the set price alert. But before we do, let's just grab one of the cursor instruments. Let's just map out a line of where we would like to set our alert. So I generally look at sort of the lowest point on these candlesticks, and then don't just use one dip, but use multiple, because realistically the stock price, everyone else is going to be setting limit orders, and as a result everyone kind of pushes the price on the lower end. And so you want to be a little bit conservative when trying to execute an order. And so what I do is, and in fact I'll just show on the screen here, so you can set the price alert. I'm going to be a bit conservative and just sell it in, say, let's do the $133. So if I right click, set price alert, and I'm going to do just $133. So I've set the price alert there. And on top of that, generally what I do is I will also execute an order should I really want the stock. So if we go to the buy tab, and from here we can select the limit, which is a limit order. And if we enter the number of shares, followed by the price we want to pay for, in our case it's $133. And you can set an expiration for either the end of the day, or you can do good till cancelled, so GTC. And that just means that the stock will be executed should the price ever drop to the $133 mark, or whatever price you set. and so you can review the order and then submit for the buy order. In my case, I am not going to do that at the moment, but that is how you set a limit order on the account. And with that said, I just want to thank everyone for watching this video, and I will catch you in the next one.